So this is Heather Mack for GetYourRockOut. I'm here with the awesome Emilie Autumn. Hello.
Thank you. Hello.
So how are you doing today?
I'm very well. We've had 2 shows.
Yeah, you've been in the UK
so
for a couple
far,
of days now.
which is kind of the first, most perfect place to start this tour, as it's like the UK in general is where most of this story that we're performing tonight is set, and it just feels like a massive homecoming. So it's really sweet that we get to start and the entire tour with the UK. It feels perfect. And also it's just like the playgrounds here are just incredible. It's such a welcoming feeling when we've had the most beautiful 2 nights.
I've got a question from one of them later on as well.
Oh, brilliant.
You've got a queue outside waiting to see you already.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Bear in mind it's like 4 o'clock. I know you've got your VIPs in later, but you've actually got a queue for the other side as well for just normal tickets, and they've asked me to ask you a question, so I'll ask you that one later on.
This is incredible. I never take that for granted. I still, every day, you can ask Melissa, my amazing manager, like I never assume anyone's going to show up. And so when I walk out and there's people there, every single night, I'm a little bit like, oh, thank goodness. Because otherwise I got dressed up for nothing.
There already,
this takes work.
We're still early.
So this is amazing. What was their question?
Their question is, what is your favourite tea?
All right. That is actually difficult because it goes between 2 very basic standard, which is, I think my ultimate original favorite from childhood on is and will always be just like very nice English breakfast. That always comes down to that, because I think like that's what I fell in love with I think that's what I had when I first came to England when I was 12. I first came for playing just violin concerts, and I went to the Hyde Park Hotel and had my first actual like tea time, tea ceremony, 4 o'clock tea situation.
Afternoon tea.
And I had that, and it was just completely life-changing. And it probably it started that whole aesthetic. And now, of course, as part of the story, it's like more of a subversive thing of like showing something that's supposedly very civilized and showing like the underbelly of a society and so forth. But I think that started the whole original love for it. And then, of course, green tea, but it's impossible to say what kind because there's a million different varieties. I mean, every kind of different leaf grown in the different part of the world, or like the sun was shining that day, and they're all different. So I know that wasn't probably the concise answer that they were looking for, but if we pick one, just go with English breakfast.
Obviously, you've got your new tea online as well, your Basil's tea.
Yeah,
and we're very excited to see, because I know that was a coming scene last year.
Yeah,
so that's available for people now.
Yep, that's an absolute, like, drinking that all the time is like that is an absolute anti-aging situation, because the antioxidants are so incredibly high in white tea, and it's good stuff. I hope everybody gets a chance to try it. And it's like all organic, fair trade. Like, we will only ever have the absolute best.
Oh, that's good.
So, yes.
Fantastic.
And there's many more varieties to
look forward to.
Oh, yeah. No, it's in the works of, we're establishing the sort of like how we make this and how we blend in small batches, and where this is done, and basically, just all the practical parts of that, because the goal is just to have like a ball of all the different kinds of things for all the different kinds of, for taste, for flavor, for beauty, for things that are going on with your body, for, medicinal purposes, all of that. So we probably shouldn't talk about tea for like the entire thing, because I totally could. So you're just going to have to stop me at some point.
So we saw you last year for the beginning of the Fight Like a Girl tour, before your album was out. And obviously the show went down really well, and your album's out now. So how do you feel the reaction to the album? Because I know you were a little bit apprehensive with doing the shows before you were doing bringing it out.
I think it was perfect, and I think, in a way, I kind of learned that I think we all get really just worked up about like when this comes out and when this happens and all of that, because it doesn't really matter. I mean, telling a part of a story. Somebody hears that song first, you're still telling it. You do a show. I mean, in the end, it's just about telling a story. And when the album came out, people got the whole story. I think it was really a good thing to have, I mean, on a practical level, it creates excitement for the album to get that bit. Like, you can hear this, but only in this way. So it actually made sense to do it the opposite of what labels and everybody would recommend. So in that way, I think we were onto something. And once the actual Flag album came out, it, I think, surprised me and was very encouraging that nobody listened to it and said, like, what the hell kind of format is this, and why do you have 3 songs that are just like instrumental interludes and things? It seemed like everybody and every journalist and every playground and every new audience member just completely realized from the beginning of it that this is meant to be something completely different. And it's funny because even people who didn't know any of, you know, hadn't read anything that I'd ever talked about before about like the musical and all of that stuff would say in a review or an interview or something that this sounds like the soundtrack to something. And
it is.
Exactly. But that means that I did something right in that, and I'm just, because like nobody's arrogant enough to really never second guess themselves, as much as I would like to be super confident in everything I do, because I can do it and I can do it for me, but it does matter that there's somebody listening, and it's not just like me and a brick wall being like, hey, how do you like this? So I think that something that I just thought of is the whole, it's like, I know this is totally random, but if you don't mind, I just had this thought of how, you know, album cycles and how long things are supposed to take, and it's like supposed to be every 2 years, 3 at the most, that you put something out. And I think what I just realized is that nobody ever considers when the audience is ready for something. And an audience in general just, or fan base or whatever you call it, just assumes like we get what we want when we want it, and nobody ever says to them, but are you ready to understand, like, if you put something out, if I put this out 3 years ago,
it wouldn't have been right.
It wouldn't have been right, because it's like I get to develop as a human being and as an artist and all those like overused words, but nobody thinks about the audience developing with you as well, and they have to. So people that even after Ophelia came out and kind of started everything, which I'm very grateful for, but I remember people wondering, like, a year after that, 2 years, exactly, and I'm thinking, but do you really fully understand what Ophelia was about yet? Because I think that's going to take some more time.
You're not ready
it's like,
to move
that's
on.
not, no, it's not just because I've heard this song enough times, like, how much it means something more. So I just had that thought about, like, this goes both ways, and that's why with the audience now, it is so incredibly perfect, and I'm so grateful for them, because I realized, actually, like, laying in my bunk last night, is I just realized this is so wonderful that they have allowed me to evolve and grow and develop, as most artists are absolutely shunned for doing. Like, you change a hair on your head and all of a sudden you're like, we liked you when you were cool. And which just really means, like, I liked you when you were that way, and you don't get to change, otherwise I don't like you anymore. And
obviously you change with the music and as you grow as a person.
As anybody does and should be allowed to. But seeing that in order for me to do that, the audience has done that as well, and we've all done that together, and in that we're all on the same level, and we've all grown, and that's why it's grown from like an audience of like gothic industrial club going whatever into an audience that's ready to like watch a fucking Broadway musical. And that would not have happened 6 years ago at all. They would not have wanted that. And I was not ready to do that. I had a lot of anger to get out. I was in the role of dealing with things. Now I'm in the role of being victorious and trying to help others to be as well, and showing a way of dealing with these things that isn't just being okay, it's being a fucking warrior at the end of it. So just wanted to share really just like a moment of total gratitude for an audience that has done far more than most have. Like, I felt completely able to be myself and grow and change.
I haven't seen the
massively.
comments and things on obviously on your wall, and just the comments that we had on the last video as well.
Oh,
You know,
I'm
it's
so
obviously that people are there and they're ready for the next part.
Absolutely.
And we've just walked past the show, we've just walked past the stage, which we're a little bit excited about.
I'm so glad you like
because
it.
there's no clock there, so it's going to be
over.
different.
Oh, it's very
so
different.
what? How has it progressed now for this year?
Well, for this year, this is like the. Oh, that's okay. Get out. That's okay. You can join me. I love you. So, what is so special about this is I think this is sort of the absolute in between, like maybe the final step between
There you go for your Broadway
rock show and the full on
the Broadway
theatrical musical. London's West End
to
start with,
because
that is like that's home. So
and then you got to come because
wouldn't
obviously
we-
we're in Manchester. You got to come to the Palace.
Oh yeah,
That would be amazing
my
because
God.
obviously we're at the Ritz today.
I know.
It's a standing
I know.
show, but yeah.
I want to. God, I need more time. But yeah, that's what's important. Is this is just the story, the album beginning to end, which is about 1/3 of the musical.
This
Like
next set.
everything here is in the musical.
Yeah.
Obviously here we're telling it with 3 people,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the story is still told as we become all of these different characters.
Yeah.
And that's really the difference, is that nobody's trying to make this into something that it isn't, and nobody's complaining, which is great because it's just we go on this ride and we tell a story and we have this absolute journey from beginning to end, and we evolve throughout these 2 hours.
Yeah.
And everybody goes with us, like from the very first moment.
Yeah.
And that completely changed my world. It's like, oh my God, I thought I was having fun before, and I get to have the privilege of going on this ride with these people. And that's the thing about the shows, like this is not about me anymore. This is about us. This is their show as much as it is mine, because this is our story now. And that's what you get when you grow and they grow, and it's not me performing for you and you hopefully paying money for it. It's we came together. It's so much more important than that, and I know most people will never get this, and I'm so
But the people who do
fortunate
will
that they
appreciate
did.
it.
I think
Because they keep going back.
Well, no, but I don't mean most people will never get this.
Yeah.
I mean most performers will
Yeah.
never
No,
get
I know what you
this.
mean.
So I mean, for both of us, I think
It's
this
a
is
different
totally
style.
a unique thing, and yeah, I know I keep saying it, but I'm just like filled with gratitude right now because I've been allowed to come so far and see the changes in them as well.
Brilliant. So you got your flag video.
Yes,
I've seen that. Obviously, with did you enjoy working with Darren Booth?
Absolutely,
I
and
apologise if I
we'd
said
have,
that wrong.
I'm sure he would forgive. He'll just be happy to be mentioned. Yeah, Darren
Obviously, he
was
produced it. 'Cause obviously you worked with it. You worked with him on Devil's Carnival. And
exactly. So I mean, and we've been like super best friends for a long time. And I just stayed at his house for like the millionth time when he was away, and fed his cat and all of that stuff. But and kind of took over, and made a mess and whatever. So that was amazing because he had wanted to, like, he asked very kindly, and I was really flattered by it, if he could do a video for me for a long time, and finally I was ready to go forth and do that. We had that moment, and it was absolutely magical. He worked so hard. Like, it represents me, but so many of the things that you see that, I mean, you know, like most everything I do myself, and that's all great and that, but he's one of the very few people that I even would allow to come up with something of their own and tell me, like, what if we do this, even if this is different from what you thought. And he's right so much of the time that it just feels so amazing to know that there's one person out there at least, and I'm sure there's more, that I can almost just leave to come up with something amazing, and know that even if, I mean, so much of the video I didn't even know about.
Because they get you.
Because he knew that he just had the freedom to go and do it, because he has so much respect for the story. He knows the music, like everything I've ever done, and listens to it obsessively, and he's read the book and he knows every detail of this thing, and his concern is always what are the plague rats, because he loves the plague rats. He's like, oh, I'm the biggest plague rat of all. And he's like, through the video, the one thing that was really adorable was that he was so concerned, like, okay, if we change this detail, if this isn't like the book, are people going to be upset? And I had to go to him and say, don't forget, this is not meant to represent the book. This is completely on its own. And the song is the one thing that isn't in the musical, because that's why it's at the beginning of the record. It sets up almost like this is the ultimate message. This is almost a social criticism done in a really fun and empowering way. And it's not just about girls at all. No. It applies to everybody. But he in the end realized, like, this is not, we don't need to worry about pissing off a plague rat. Like, I think they'll go with us on this. I think they're on our side. So, yeah, which is funny, though, because we did get some letters after that, which were like, why does Mark Sensor, like, kiss you at the end and put a key in your mouth? That was not in the book.
Yeah,
and I had to, but it's like, because that was awesome, and because the whole thing was telling a story, basically saying that the enemy is not always who you think, and that even in this world where it often was like boys against girls, and we didn't start that, we didn't want to be against anybody, but it was an oppressive time, as oftentimes it still is now, but that, I mean, this is the fact. This is the story, and this is the reality of it, which is where the story came from. Like, I didn't make this shit up. This is real. So it's like, there were these girls imprisoned. Well, there were no women in power at the time, so obviously, who's imprisoning them? It's going to be a guy. That's just the way it is. So this is the story, and yet I wanted to, because the video was not meant to be from the book. It was obviously taking elements from that, but it's because it's me, so those are the things that I stand for in general. There's going to be a rat, not because there are rats in the book, but because there are rats in my life. So it represents that more than anything. But it represents like this general world that all of this has to do with. It's just the aesthetic of this asylum world. So it was about, thank you, but it was about just showing that, and also getting the chance to tell like another story from this world. And the thing was, I purposely wanted it to be very clear that this song and this video and this whole message was not, to me, was not meant to be exclusive to boys. It was not meant to be anything like that. And it was important to me to write into the screenplay for just this video that there had to be a message about, even when things seem this way, like, you never know who's really on your side, and you never know why somebody does something, when you realize that men of that time were completely, they didn't always have to agree with what the people in power were doing. I'm sure that there were many, many gentlemen who didn't want to have to treat us in this way, that just like need the job to be working in one of these places, that ultimately, if given the chance, they would so be on our side. And I wanted to show that I didn't want the message to be girls against boys, like all women are good and all boys are evil, because I don't believe that. And I didn't want that to be in the video, like, this is only for us, fuck you guys. So it was important to make it like there was somebody that helps us, and it had to be a boy, because, and it's like in the book, I mean, there's Madame Mornington, who ultimately kind of changes at the end and repents, but she was against us, and that was important to show that it isn't all women are good, because that's not true. And so that's why a lot of differences were made in that.
No, I think it was important. But
thank you so much.
Thank you very much for talking to us.
Of course.
I wish we could talk all day.
I do too.
But so we can.
I know.
So we got the stuff to do.
How I
so we wish you well on the rest of the tour, especially
so
with Rob's on Biz in America.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was such a random thing to be asked to do.
Enjoy on stage later. We look forward to seeing you.
So
thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm totally privileged.